Hello there, weary traveler, and welcome back to this cozy corner of history where we explore the stories that time tried to bury. Whether you're nestled under warm blankets ready to drift off to sleep, or simply seeking to unwind with some gentle historical storytelling, I'm so grateful you've chosen to spend this evening with me. If you don't mind, I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from tonight, and what time of day it is for you right now. Feel free to leave a comment and let me know. It's always such a comfort to see our community of history enthusiasts gathered here from every corner of the globe. And if you find peace in these calm, immersive tales from ages past, go ahead and click that subscribe button so you don't miss our next journey together. But for now, let's allow the gentle weight of modern comfort to settle around you as we travel back to a time and place where the very earth beneath one's feet could become a prison more terrible than any dungeon. Tonight, we're descending deep into the Spanish mountains, following a story that will remind us just how precious our freedom truly is. Picture yourself settling deeper into your pillow as we begin this tale of Marcus. Not his birth name, but the identity branded upon him by Roman law. Close your eyes if you wish, and let your breathing slow as we explore together what it meant to face each dawn, knowing it might be spent in darkness deeper than any night you've ever known. Take a deep breath with me now, feeling the softness of your bedding, the warmth of your room, the safety of your walls. Hold on to that comfort as we journey back nearly 2,000 years to a world where such simple pleasures were luxuries beyond imagination, for those unfortunate enough to find themselves condemned to what Romans called damnatio ad metalla, condemnation to the mines. The morning mist clings to the Spanish mountainsides like whispered secrets, and if you were to walk these ancient paths today, you might never guess what lies beneath your feet. Miles upon miles of tunnels honeycomb the rock, carved by hands that knew they would never again feel sunlight freely. Worked by men whose only crime was often nothing more than desperation, a stolen loaf of bread to feed hungry children, or perhaps the simple act of worshipping gods that Rome deemed dangerous. Let yourself imagine, if you will, standing at the edge of these mountains as dawn breaks across the peaks. The air is crisp and clean, carrying the scent of wild herbs and pine. Birds call to each other across the valleys, and morning light paints the stone faces in shades of gold and amber. It's beautiful, peaceful even. But beneath this serene surface lies a different world entirely, a world of legal death that somehow continued breathing. Marcus awakens not to birdsong, but to the rattle of chains being counted, inventory being taken of human property that the Roman state has classified as equipment rather than citizens. The stone shelf that serves as his bed holds the mountain's chill like a memory of winter that never ends, drawing warmth from his body with the same systematic efficiency that Roman law drew away his name, his rights, his hope. Feel the roughness of that stone against your back as you lie in your own soft bed. Notice how the cold would seep through the thin wool blanket, if you could call it a blanket, that scratches against skin already marked by 3 years of lessons in how human flesh adapts to the requirements of silver extraction. 3 years of learning that Roman justice, for all its elaborate procedures and philosophical foundations, could reduce a free citizen to something less than the metal he was condemned to dig from unyielding rock. Around him in the darkness, 600 other souls breathe in spaces carved for half that number. Their exhalations create clouds in the perpetual chill, a fog of human warmth that rises and dissipates like hopes that dare not linger too long in such a place. These men come from every corner of the empire, Gauls who fought too fiercely for their freedom, Christians who loved their God more than Caesar, Jews who refused to abandon traditions older than Rome itself, and citizens like Marcus, whose only rebellion was choosing their children's hunger over Roman law. Listen to their breathing, soft and labored, each breath a small victory against air, thick with stone dust and the weight of legal death. Some cough quietly, a sound that speaks to lungs slowly filling with the very mountain they're condemned to hollow out, grain by grain, breath by breath. Others whisper prayers in languages that Rome would prefer to see die with their speakers, words that carry the warmth of homes that exist now only in memory. The first sound of the day is not the gentle chime of bells calling citizens to morning prayers, but the scrape of metal against stone as guards check the chains that bind not bodies, but legal status, the invisible shackles of a judicial system that could transform a man into mining equipment with nothing more than proper documentation and the stroke of a magistrate's stylus. These guards are themselves condemned men, elevated slightly above the miners through Roman genius for maintaining order among the legally dead. They understand that desperate men with nothing left to lose require careful watching, that human beings who have been officially declared non-human can still damage valuable equipment or disrupt production schedules if they retain enough sense of self to feel anger about circumstances that Roman law defines as just punishment for their crimes against imperial order. As you rest in the safety of your own room, imagine the weight of that realization settling over these men each morning. The understanding that their suffering serves no purpose beyond profit, that their pain has been calculated into spreadsheets, that their deaths will be recorded not as human tragedy, but as acceptable business expenses in the great ledger of imperial expansion. The water they receive comes from underground springs that taste of minerals and metal, distributed in measures calculated to maintain work capacity without providing comfort. Each drop has been measured against productivity requirements, each sip allocated according to formulas that balance minimum biological needs against maximum conservation of resources. It tastes of the mountain's composition and the contamination that occurs when natural springs must flow through spaces systematically poisoned by mining operations. Feel that metallic taste on your tongue as you reach for your own glass of clean, cool water. Notice how different it would be to drink, not for pleasure or refreshment, but merely to maintain the biological functions necessary for another day of systematic destruction, of stone, of hope, of the very essence of what it means to be human rather than equipment. The morning meal arrives as Marcus sits up slowly, feeling the familiar weight of exhaustion that accumulates like sediment from a river of suffering that never runs dry. Barley porridge, calculated to provide exactly the calories needed to fuel another day of rock breaking without offering energy sufficient for resistance. The grain has been measured, weighed, and portioned according to Roman administrative genius that can determine precisely how much nutrition a condemned man requires to extract silver without waste on unnecessary comfort. Imagine the texture of that porridge, thick and gritty, carrying no warmth of home cooking or love, no seasoning beyond the salt of tears shed by men who must eat to live and live to serve an empire that has already declared them dead. Each spoonful represents the cold mathematics of human maintenance, calories distributed not from kindness, but from the same calculating efficiency that determines how much oil a lamp requires to burn through the night. But there was a time when Marcus knew the taste of different food, when his wife Livia would bake bread in their small oven, filling their modest home with aromas that spoke of love and care and hope for tomorrow. He remembers the way she would hum while kneading dough, her voice carrying melodies learned from her mother, who had learned them from her mother before her. These were songs about harvest celebrations and wedding feasts, about abundance and joy, and the simple pleasure of feeding those you love. Their children, Marcus allows himself to remember their names, though it brings pain sharp as any chisel blow. Little Gaius and sweet Julia would dance around the kitchen table while their mother worked, their laughter filling spaces that now exist only in memory. Gaius, all of 5 years old, would stand on a wooden stool to help knead the dough, his small hands working beside his mother's, learning the rhythm of bread making that connected them to generations of ancestors who had fed their families with the same loving care. Julia, barely 3 when Marcus was taken away, had a laugh like silver bells ringing in morning air. She would clap her hands when the bread emerged from the oven, golden and perfect, steam rising like incense in their humble kitchen. Sometimes Livia would break off a piece while it was still warm, spreading it with honey that Marcus had bartered for with grain from their small plot. The children would eat with delighted giggles, honey dripping down their chins, their eyes bright with the simple joy of being loved and fed and safe. These memories are dangerous things in a place like this, dear listener. They can either sustain a man through the darkest hours or break him completely when the contrast becomes too sharp to bear. Marcus has learned to ration them like the guards ration water, allowing himself only small sips of remembrance, lest he drown in the ocean of what was lost. But tonight, as you rest in your own warm bed, perhaps with your own loved ones sleeping safely nearby, you can hold these images for Marcus: the warmth of a family kitchen, the sound of children's laughter, the simple miracle of a meal prepared with love, rather than calculated to sustain just enough life to extract more death. Let yourself feel grateful for the ability to feed those you care about, to create abundance rather than survive on rationed hope. As morning light begins to filter down through air shafts carved to provide just enough ventilation to prevent immediate death, while maintaining the underground environment necessary for efficient mining operations, Marcus prepares mentally for another descent into tunnels that map the intersection between Roman justice and Roman engineering. These are passages where legal death sentences are executed slowly through industrial processes that transform condemned prisoners into silver ore through methods that Roman scholars classify as punishment rather than murder, because proper paperwork exists declaring such transformation legally justified. The march to the mine entrance unfolds like a procession of ghosts who still cast shadows, 600 condemned men moving through mountain paths while guards on horseback provide escort not to prevent escape. The terrain itself serves as prison walls built from stone and distance, and the certain knowledge that civilization lies farther than weakened legs could carry. Bodies already pushed beyond normal endurance into territories that exist only when legal death removes all constraints that usually protect human beings from conditions incompatible with survival. Feel the crunch of frost beneath bare feet as we join this daily pilgrimage, the cold mountain air sharp in lungs that have grown accustomed to the thick atmosphere of underground spaces. The guards carry documentation authorizing them to accelerate death sentences for condemned prisoners who fail to maintain productivity standards, legal authority to transform gradual execution into immediate execution through methods that Roman law classifies as necessary enforcement rather than murder, because killing someone who has already been legally declared dead presents no legal complications provided proper administrative procedures are followed. Listen to the sounds of this procession as you lie in your comfortable bed, the shuffle of feet that have forgotten what it feels like to walk on soft grass, the quiet coughing of men whose lungs are slowly turning to stone, the occasional whispered prayer in languages that carried the hopes and dreams of entire peoples before Rome decided those peoples were better served as mining equipment than as independent cultures with their own gods and customs and ways of seeing the world. There was once a man among them named Brennus, a Gallic chieftain who had led his tribe in rebellion against Roman expansion into territories his people had called home for generations beyond counting. Brennus knew every tree in forests that Romans cut down for mine timbers, every stream that Romans diverted for ore washing, every sacred grove that Romans desecrated in their systematic transformation of living landscape into industrial extraction site. He remembered leading his warriors in charges across fields that bloomed with wild flowers in spring, defending villages where children played games passed down through centuries of Gallic tradition, protecting shrines where his people honored gods who demanded no human sacrifice, required no systematic suffering, asked only for respect for the natural world and care for community members. Brennus had fought with spear and shield and battle cry under skies that belonged to no empire, defending freedom that existed not as legal concept, but as birthright inherited from ancestors who had lived and loved and died as free people. But Roman efficiency had ground down Gallic resistance through methods more systematic than individual battle could counter. They built roads to move legions faster than tribal warriors could respond, established supply lines that could sustain campaigns longer than seasonal warfare could maintain resistance, created legal frameworks that transformed defeated peoples from humans deserving negotiation into resources awaiting allocation according to imperial need. Brennus had watched his warriors fall not just to Roman swords, but to Roman organization, their courage no match for bureaucratic systems that could calculate exactly how many soldiers would be needed to pacify specific territories, how much resistance could be tolerated before population transfer became more efficient than local suppression, how conquered peoples could be most productively distributed among various imperial projects requiring human resources expendable enough to use in dangerous occupations. Now Brennus carries stones instead of weapons. His hands that once gripped spear shaft now grip hammer handle. His voice that once rallied warriors to defend their homeland now whispers encouragement to fellow condemned prisoners facing another day of systematic consumption in service to empire that measures human worth only through equations reducing existence to commodity prices and replacement costs. The mine entrance opens before us like a wound in the mountainside that Romans have systematically expanded through decades of operations, each year carving deeper into stone and human possibility until original surface excavations have become vertical cities of tunnels descending into darkness, designed to consume condemned prisoners efficiently while extracting maximum silver value from geological formations that resist human effort with the same determination that human hearts resist despair. Here, at the threshold between world and legal afterlife, Marcus receives his daily assignment written on a wax tablet containing numbers that represent his quota of silver ore, the precise tonnage he must extract to justify continued existence, a mathematical relationship between avoiding immediate execution and maintaining capacity to extract metals that will become coins stamped with images of emperors who never visited these mines except in accounting ledgers that summarize production efficiency and human depreciation rates. Let yourself feel the weight of that tablet in your hands as you rest comfortably in your bed. Smooth wax bearing scratched numerals that reduce a human life to measurements of rock that must be broken, silver that must be separated, quotas that must be met. The Romans had calculated exactly how much suffering could be extracted from each condemned prisoner, how many years of labor could be obtained before replacement became necessary, how to balance the costs of maintaining human assets against the expenses of acquiring fresh inventory through legal proceedings. The tools Marcus receives represent Roman engineering excellence applied to human destruction, implements calibrated for breaking rock and breaking human bodies with equal efficiency, while maintaining the plausible legal fiction that condemned prisoners are being punished rather than systematically murdered through industrial processes. The hammer fits perfectly in hands that Roman law has declared forfeit, its weight distributed according to calculations that maximize force transfer from human muscle to stone surface, while ensuring that repeated use gradually destroys the joints, bones, and connective tissue that supports human movement. Close your eyes and feel that hammer's weight, the wooden handle worn smooth by the grip of desperate men, the iron head heavy with purpose and promise of pain. Each blow will send shock waves through bones already weakened by years of identical impacts, vibrations that accumulate in skeleton and soul until the boundary between human being and mining tool becomes blurred beyond recognition. There was a time when Marcus held different tools: a wooden plow that turned earth in preparation for planting, seeds that carried promise of harvest, scythes that cut grain destined for family table rather than imperial storehouse. His hands once knew the satisfaction of work that created rather than destroyed, labor that built life rather than systematically consuming it, effort that served love rather than serving legal systems designed to transform human beings into equipment through simple mechanism of judicial condemnation. He remembers the feel of good soil crumbling between his fingers as he prepared seed beds for barley and wheat, the spring earth dark and rich with promise, smelling of rain and growth and possibility. These were hands that could coax life from the ground, that understood the patient rhythms of planting and tending and harvesting, that created abundance rather than extracting wealth through systematic destruction of everything that makes existence meaningful. But those same hands that once scattered seeds now grip tools designed to shatter stone. Muscles that once guided plow through fertile furrows now swing hammers against geological resistance that yields reluctantly to human effort, measured not in crops grown, but in ounces of precious metal extracted through gradual consumption of human capacity. The irony is sharp as chisel point. Hands that once fed life now serve legal death. Skills that once created abundance now contribute to systematic scarcity that ensures condemned prisoners never possess enough of anything: food, water, rest, hope, to imagine alternatives to continued compliance with sentences designed to consume them slowly. The descent begins on a platform operated by condemned prisoners whose entire existence consists of lifting and lowering human cargo, men transformed into components of a vertical transportation system that moves workers and ore with mechanical precision. Their lives have been reduced to the rhythm of pulleys and counterweights that raise silver and lower condemned prisoners into depths where legal death becomes biological death, through processes so gradual that the precise moment of transition becomes impossible to identify. Feel that sinking sensation as the platform drops away from morning light, carrying us down past level markers that count like an inverted calendar, measuring progress toward depths where Roman law intersects with geological reality. Each level represents deeper penetration into mountain interior and deeper penetration into territory where human beings cease to exist as legal entities and become purely functional assets whose value consists entirely in their capacity to continue extracting silver until biological systems fail completely. The air grows thicker as we descend, heavy with the breath of 600 condemned men and the exhalations of mountain itself, stone that has held these secrets for millions of years and now must yield them to human determination backed by Roman engineering and legal authority that transforms people into equipment through administrative procedures. Listen to the creaking of ropes and wooden platforms, sounds that speak to human ingenuity applied to human consumption, mechanical solutions to problems of efficiency in environments designed to kill slowly enough for maximum economic benefit. Level 5 houses the lamp maintenance operations, staffed by condemned prisoners whose crime was practicing religion that Roman authorities deemed threatening to imperial stability. These men once debated theology and studied sacred texts, but now their entire existence consists of maintaining oil-fed illumination that makes underground work possible while providing just enough light to see silver veins without revealing the full horror of conditions under which extraction occurs. Here works a man called Stephanos, though that name too has been replaced by numbers in Roman records tracking his depreciation as human asset. Once he served as priest in Christian community that met in secret, offering comfort to believers who risked everything to follow teachings about love and redemption and hope for better world than Rome provided. Stephanos had baptized children in hidden springs, blessed marriages that Roman law might not recognize, comforted families facing persecution for refusing to worship emperors as gods. His gentle hands that once broke bread in memory of Christ now maintain oil levels in lamps that illuminate systematic human destruction disguised as legal punishment. His voice that once offered prayers of hope now whispers instructions to other lamp tenders about wick trimming and oil conservation, technical knowledge replacing theological wisdom, practical skills in human consumption replacing spiritual guidance in human redemption. Yet even here, in circumstances designed to eliminate all humanity except capacity for technical function, Stephanos finds ways to serve his fellow condemned prisoners that echo his former calling. He ensures lamps burn steady in tunnels where men work alone, understanding that consistent light means difference between life and death when ceiling collapse or toxic gas could kill in darkness. He shares oil rations when others' lamps fail, knowing his own quota punishment, but choosing to illumine another's path, even when it increases his own suffering. Sometimes, when guards cannot hear, Stephanos whispers fragments of prayers learned in better times, words that carry across tunnels like seeds scattered on stony ground, taking root in hearts that legal proceedings have declared dead, but which continue beating with stubborn persistence that amazes even condemned men who have learned to expect nothing except continued degradation until biological systems cease functioning entirely. Level 10 marks the beginning of active extraction areas where the real work of condemned prisoner consumption begins, where men attack stone faces in spaces so narrow they must work bent double, so low they cannot stand upright, so confined that movement options consist only of forward penetration into rock or backward retreat into darkness. Human flexibility becomes a tool as precise as metal implements, bodies contorted into positions that maximize access to silver veins while minimizing airspace that must be provided with ventilation. Marcus receives his section assignment in Tunnel M, a passage extending horizontally from the main shaft for distances measured in human body lengths rather than Roman feet. These are spaces designed around the assumption that condemned prisoners will spend entire shifts crawling rather than walking, breathing dust rather than air, existing in positions that gradually transform human spines into instruments shaped for maximum effectiveness in environments too confined for biological survival. Let your own spine settle against your soft mattress as we follow Marcus into spaces where standing upright becomes impossible, where the ceiling presses down like the weight of all Roman law and custom and tradition that has decided some human beings deserve to die slowly underground so that others might live in marble luxury above. Feel how your body naturally seeks comfort and proper alignment. Then imagine spending 12 hours bent into shapes that serve silver extraction rather than human anatomy. The silver vein Marcus must work runs through quartz harder than bone, requiring hammer blows that send shock waves through a skeleton already weakened by years of identical impacts. Each strike represents a collision between human determination and geological resistance, flesh and iron against stone that has waited millions of years and can wait millions more, indifferent to the brief sparks of human suffering that illuminate its crystals. The mathematics of extraction become personal arithmetic, as Marcus calculates how many hammer strikes his shoulders can sustain, how many hours his back can maintain positions required for work in spaces designed for metal access rather than human anatomy, how many breaths he can take in atmosphere thick with dust that settles in lungs like concrete, gradually transforming organs designed for oxygen processing into repositories for stone particles that accumulate until breathing becomes conscious effort rather than automatic biological function. As you breathe easily in your warm room, feel grateful for air that nourishes rather than slowly kills, for lungs that process oxygen without grinding stone, for the simple miracle of breath that flows freely, rather than struggling through passages increasingly clogged with the very mountain these men are condemned to hollow out grain by grain, breath by breath, heartbeat by heartbeat. The quota system ensures that survival depends not on endurance alone, but on geological lottery that determines whether silver veins run through stone soft enough for human tools or rock so hard that meeting requirements demands working beyond human physical limits, pushing condemned prisoners into territories of exertion that exist only when legal death status removes normal constraints, protecting human beings from conditions incompatible with biological survival. The work becomes meditation on pain, repetitive motion that numbs mind while systematically destroying body, rhythm of extraction that measures time, not in hours, but in progressive loss of human capacity, converted to gradual accumulation of precious metal. Strike the stone. Feel the shock travel through arm and shoulder into spine. Strike again, feeling yesterday's damage compound with today's destruction. Strike once more, knowing tomorrow will demand identical effort from capacity diminished by each impact. The silver reveals itself reluctantly, tiny flakes and fragments mixed with waste rock in proportions that make every ounce of precious metal a victory achieved through pounds of human effort, mathematics ensuring that Roman wealth increases while condemned prisoner life decreases according to formulas favoring imperial treasuries over individual survival by margins so vast that single days' silver extraction represents years of human effort measured in accumulated damage to biological systems. Around Marcus, other condemned prisoners work with concentrated intensity of men who understand that failure to meet quotas means immediate transition from gradual execution to rapid execution, transfer to mining sections where death timelines accelerate from months to weeks, where working conditions deteriorate from barely survivable to actively lethal within time frames that can be measured in days rather than seasons. Their hammer blows create symphony of destruction, percussion echoing through tunnels like heartbeat of mechanical god that consumes human effort and produces silver, rhythm marking time in currency of pain rather than comfort of hours passing naturally toward rest. Listen to this underground music as you rest in silence, hearing in it voices of men who once sang different songs, lullabies to children, work songs in harvest fields, hymns in hidden churches, battle chants on fields where they fought for freedom that existed as more than legal concept. There was once a man working nearby called Titus, a Roman citizen whose crime had been nothing more than financial desperation that drove him to forge documents, creating false records of grain shipments that allowed him to feed his family during season when honest work could not provide enough coins to purchase bread at prices inflated by speculation in urban markets. Titus had been scribe in imperial bureaucracy, skilled in letters and numbers, trusted with records that tracked resources flowing from provinces to capital. But when his wife fell ill and physicians demanded payment he could not provide, when his children cried from hunger that his honest wages could not satisfy, when landlords threatened eviction for rent he could not meet, despite working every hour bureaucracy required, Titus made choice that transformed respectable citizen into condemned prisoner through simple mechanism of creating documentation that showed grain where none existed, silver where only debt remained, abundance where only scarcity could survive. His education, which once served imperial administration, now serves silver extraction through application of same careful attention to detail that made him valuable clerk. Titus approaches mining with systematic precision, calculating angles of attack that maximize force transfer while minimizing wasted motion, developing techniques for identifying productive veins while avoiding geological hazards that could crush bodies already weakened by sustained application of effort beyond normal human limits. Yet education also makes Titus acutely aware of mathematics governing his situation. equations balancing human consumption against metal production, formulas calculating depreciation rates for condemned prisoner assets, projections showing statistical probability of survival measured against projected silver output. He knows exactly how much human capacity each ounce of silver costs, precisely how many men die extracting wealth that decorates imperial buildings and funds imperial expansion into territories where fresh populations await processing through legal systems designed to transform human beings into mining equipment. This knowledge might drive another man to despair, but Titus uses it differently, sharing calculations with fellow condemned prisoners who benefit from understanding systematic nature of their consumption. He teaches them to recognize signs of tunnel instability, to identify silver veins that yield more easily to human effort, to pace work in ways that meet quotas while preserving strength needed for survival, measured not in comfort achieved, but in suffering endured without complete surrender to circumstances designed to eliminate everything human except functional capacity. The water arrives in afternoon allocation, each drop precious as silver itself, distributed according to Roman calculations that balance hydration requirements against conservation needs. Marcus receives his measured portion in vessel that holds exactly amount determined, necessary for biological function, liquid that tastes of minerals leached from rock and contamination introduced by chemical processes required for silver purification. Feel the moisture on your own lips as you perhaps reach for clean water beside your bed, tasting nothing but refreshment where Marcus tastes metal and mountain dissolution. Flavors that speak to systematic poisoning of natural springs forced to flow through spaces designed for ore processing rather than life support. Every sip requires conscious decision to accept contamination necessary for continued existence versus refusal that would mean immediate death through dehydration in environments already pushing biological systems past design limits. The afternoon meal consists of barley porridge providing precisely calculated nutrition, calories measured against energy expenditure required for quota completion, protein adequate for muscle repair without enabling recovery that might restore strength sufficient for resistance activities. No seasoning masks taste of grain rejected by military suppliers, yet deemed suitable for condemned prisoners whose dietary requirements are calculated for minimum functionality rather than satisfaction. But as Marcus eats this deliberately bland sustenance, he allows himself a brief moment of gratitude that would puzzle Roman administrators who designed meal to provide no comfort, only fuel for continued consumption. Gratitude not for porridge itself, but for capacity to taste anything at all, for functioning digestive system that can extract nutrition from whatever substrate available, for continued biological processes that enable tomorrow's survival, even under circumstances designed to make survival increasingly difficult with each passing day. This gratitude extends to water that tastes of metal, to air thick with stone dust, to stone shelf that serves as bed, to blanket that scratches rather than comforts, not because these things deserve appreciation in themselves, but because awareness of their inadequacy makes Marcus grateful for things remembered: clean water from his well, fresh bread from his wife's oven, soft straw mattress where he once slept beside woman who loved him, wool blankets woven with care rather than efficiency. Such gratitude serves as form of resistance against Roman intentions, method of maintaining humanity within circumstances designed to eliminate everything human except capacity for mineral extraction. Romans want condemned prisoners to experience only suffering, to know only scarcity, to remember only pain, because contentment could undermine productivity, while hope might foster dangerous thoughts about alternatives to continued compliance with legal death sentences. But gratitude practiced carefully, disciplined to focus on contrasts rather than current circumstances, enables Marcus to maintain connection to identity that existed before Roman classification systems reduced him to mining equipment. Appreciation for remembered abundance affirms that abundance once existed and therefore could theoretically exist again, even if current reality makes such possibility invisible except through careful cultivation of memory that serves hope rather than despair. The silver accumulates slowly in small piles beside work areas, fragments representing hours of labor and permanent damage to human anatomy, or samples that will be weighed and credited against quotas, while human cost of extraction goes unrecorded in any ledger, unmeasured by any accounting system, invisible to calculations except condemned prisoner arithmetic of pain endured and capacity lost, and time remaining before mountain claims what Roman legal system has already declared forfeit. Each piece of silver catches torchlight and reflects it back like tiny mirrors holding glimpses of surface world that condemned prisoners may never see again. Metal that will be refined and shaped into coins, bearing images of emperors who never descended into these depths. Jewelry that will adorn citizens who never calculated human cost of beauty. Temple decorations that will honor gods who apparently require human sacrifice disguised as legal procedure to maintain their favor toward Roman civilization. Marcus examines fragment of silver ore extracted through morning's labor, seeing in its crystalline structure something beautiful despite circumstances of its acquisition, geological artistry created through millions of years of pressure and heat, natural processes that shaped precious metal long before humans learned to value it enough to die extracting it from reluctant stone. Beauty persists even in contexts designed to eliminate aesthetic appreciation. Wonder survives even when systematic consumption leaves little energy for contemplation beyond immediate survival requirements. This capacity for appreciation represents another form of resistance against Roman intentions, maintenance of human faculties that serve no productive purpose, preservation of responses that contributed nothing to silver extraction, yet affirmed continued existence of consciousness, capable of recognizing beauty despite circumstances designed to eliminate everything except functional capacity. Appreciation for geological artistry acknowledges natural world that exists independent of human legal systems, recognizes processes larger than imperial ambition, affirms connections to creation that transcend temporary classifications, reducing human beings to equipment. But appreciation must be brief, controlled, disciplined to avoid dangerous territories where beauty might inspire hope, for conditions allowing sustained aesthetic contemplation, where natural wonder might foster dreams of freedom to pursue knowledge for its own sake, rather than applying intelligence only to problems of survival under circumstances designed to consume human capacity faster than natural processes can restore it. The afternoon shift continues with mechanical precision that would impress Roman engineers who designed systems for maximum efficiency in human consumption. Condemned prisoners' working spaces carved for silver access rather than human comfort, attacking geological resistance with determination that speaks to human stubbornness more persistent than stone, mortality more enduring than mineral structures that seem eternal, but yield eventually to sustained application of human effort, backed by Roman engineering and legal authority. Tools grow heavier as day progresses, not because weight increases, but because strength decreases. Constant impact transferring shock waves through bones until entire skeleton becomes resonating chamber for geological violence. Condemned prisoner bodies transformed into tuning forks, vibrating with frequency of rock being broken, and human capacity being systematically destroyed, one hammer blow at a time. Let your own body relax completely against soft bedding as we witness this systematic consumption, feeling grateful for rest that restores rather than rest that merely delays tomorrow's identical destruction, for sleep that heals rather than sleep interrupted by coughing that never stops, for dreams that carry hope rather than dreams, haunted by echoes of hammers against stone that continue striking even in unconsciousness. The mountain holds its silver jealously, hiding precious metal in geological patterns that seem designed to exact maximum human cost for every fragment extracted. Veins that twist through stone formations requiring attack from angles that cause immediate pain and permanent damage. Quartz harder than human determination, yet somehow yielding to human stubbornness that refuses to accept impossibility even when possibility requires paying prices no free citizen would consider bearable. Chisels require constant repositioning as silver veins follow geological logic incompatible with human anatomy, forcing condemned prisoners to work from positions that compress spines into shapes never intended by natural design, that strain joints beyond limits established by evolution, that demand flexibility achievable only when legal death status removes normal protections, preventing systematic destruction of biological systems through industrial application. As surface afternoon moves toward evening marked by sun that condemned prisoners have not seen for hours, and may not see for hours more, the underground world continues operating according to schedules that prioritize production over people, efficiency over humanity, imperial prosperity over individual survival. Time moves differently here, measured not in hours passing naturally toward rest, but in quotas approached or missed, strength depleted or somehow maintained, hope disciplined enough to sustain effort without creating expectations that disappointment could shatter. Oil lamps provide illumination calculated to reveal immediate work areas while keeping broader reality of underground imprisonment hidden in shadows that mercy refuses to illuminate completely, creating pools of visibility that allow silver extraction while concealing full scope of systematic human consumption occurring simultaneously throughout mining complex. Light makes possible the work that destroys the workers, enables productivity that consumes producers, illuminates ore extraction while obscuring human destruction that makes such extraction economically viable for imperial operations. The rhythm of extraction becomes meditation on endurance, repetitive motion that numbs awareness while systematically damaging bodies that must somehow continue functioning despite accumulating injuries that would disable free citizens whose legal status provides protection from conditions incompatible with biological survival. Strike and feel impact travel through already weakened joints. Strike again and feel yesterday's damage compound with today's destruction. Strike once more and calculate how many more impacts skeleton can absorb before structural failure makes continued function impossible. Yet somehow, human determination proves more persistent than geological resistance, stubborn flesh more enduring than eternal stone, mortal hopes more lasting than ancient rock, that has witnessed civilizations rise and fall, yet never learned to value human courage displayed in spaces carved from systematic suffering and Roman engineering excellence applied to the systematic consumption of legally dead citizens who continue breathing just long enough to extract maximum value from their remaining capacity for labor, pain, and slow death in service to imperial silver production. The quota numbers seem to mock human limitations, representing amounts of silver ore that require working beyond normal endurance levels, demanding productivity rates achievable only by men who have learned to function despite injury, exhaustion, and gradual failure of biological systems pushed past design specifications by legal death sentences executed through industrial processes that Roman scholars classify as punishment rather than murder because proper documentation exists, authorizing such transformation of living citizens into mining equipment. Marcus calculates remaining strength against quotas still unmet, mathematics of survival that requires precise balance between working hard enough to avoid immediate execution while conserving enough energy to survive each day's systematic destruction. This arithmetic has no solutions, only temporary postponements of inevitable biological failure that Roman administrators handle with same efficiency. They apply to all resource management challenges involving assets that depreciate through use. The silver vein seems to retreat deeper into stone, as if playing cruel game with human effort, requiring ever greater force to penetrate geological resistance that yields reluctantly to human determination, measured not in comfort achieved, but in suffering endured, without complete surrender to circumstances designed to eliminate everything human, except capacity for continued mineral extraction until biological systems fail completely, and replacement becomes necessary through conquest of territories whose populations can be processed through legal systems designed to transform human beings into equipment. As evening approaches surface world that condemned prisoners experience only through subtle changes in ventilation patterns and guard shift schedules rather than natural light cycles, the ascent toward barracks begins as administrative decision based on productivity calculations rather than celestial movement. Time measured by silver extraction accomplished versus diminishing capacity of human machinery to continue functioning within acceptable efficiency parameters established by Roman engineers who design mining operations to consume condemned prisoners at precisely rate that maximizes ore recovery while minimizing replacement costs. The platform rises through levels counting progress toward air that will still taste of metal and death, but carries possibility of breathing without conscious effort. Atmosphere adjusted to support life, rather than gradually steal it away through systematic accumulation of particles that transform organs designed for gas exchange into repositories for stone dust that settles like geological sediment in riverbed of human anatomy. Level by level, Marcus climbs toward spaces where ceiling height permits standing upright, where human spines can resume natural curves instead of industrial contortions required for silver access, where conversation becomes possible rather than communication limited to grunts of effort and whispered warnings about unstable stone. Yet even this relief carries weight of knowledge that tomorrow will bring identical descent, same quotas to meet, same geological resistance to overcome through application of human determination that grows more costly with each passing day. The silver fragments in his quota bag represent precise conversion rate between legal death sentences and imperial prosperity, each ounce extracted requiring specific amounts of pain endured, strength depleted, hope disciplined into forms that sustain effort without creating expectations that reality cannot fulfill. This metal will be refined and shaped into currency that free citizens handle without considering human cost, jewelry that adorns bodies never bent double in spaces carved for metal access rather than human anatomy. Evening count proceeds with Roman bureaucratic precision that tracks ore production as carefully as merchants track inventory, while human cost receives no measurement beyond simple notation of whether each mining asset remains functional or requires replacement through conquest of fresh territories, whose populations can be identified, convicted, and processed through legal systems designed to transform human beings into equipment through simple mechanism of judicial condemnation followed by industrial consumption. Feel the relief of being counted as present, of meeting quotas that justify continued existence, of surviving another day in circumstances where survival represents victory, measured not in comfort achieved, but in suffering endured without complete surrender to despair that would render condemned prisoners useless even as mining tools. Guards examine ore bags with expertise, ensuring full effort rather than resistance disguised as compliance, checking productivity levels against standards calculated to extract maximum value from human assets before replacement becomes necessary. Water ration for evening provides hydration calculated to support biological function through night, while ensuring tomorrow's thirst will motivate prompt return to spaces where water availability depends entirely upon continued productivity, where simple act of drinking clean water becomes privilege earned through successful completion of daily quotas measured in human destruction converted to precious metal extraction. Relief of moisture against lips cracked by dust and effort tastes better than memory of mountain streams that once flowed freely through territories now honeycombed with passages designed to drain mineral wealth and human life from geological formations. Evening meal arrives with portions calculated to provide exactly nutrition required to repair today's damage sufficiently to enable tomorrow's identical damage. Calories distributed according to formulas balancing human maintenance costs against productivity requirements, ensuring condemned prisoners retain strength to continue functioning while preventing accumulation of energy that might enable resistance activities, disrupting mining operations designed to consume human life efficiently. The barley porridge carries no warmth beyond temperature necessary to prevent immediate solidification, no seasoning to mask taste of grain deemed suitable for maintaining mining equipment, despite being rejected as inadequate for feeding soldiers or citizens whose comfort matters to imperial calculations. Yet after days spent breathing stone dust and tasting metal contamination, even this deliberate deprivation provides moments of satisfaction that speak to human capacity for finding pleasure in circumstances designed to eliminate all possibility of comfort or joy. Around Marcus, other condemned prisoners gather with faces reflecting exhaustion that comes not from temporary exertion, but from accumulated weight of existence spent in conditions designed to consume human life at precisely the rate that maximizes silver extraction while minimizing replacement costs for human assets. These men represent territories conquered and populations redistributed according to Roman strategic planning that treats human beings as renewable resources harvested from defeated enemies and deployed wherever imperial interests require labor that free Romans prefer not to provide personally. Listen to their quiet conversations developing in whispers that carry languages from across the empire, dialects persisting despite Roman efforts to eliminate cultural identities that might foster solidarity among condemned prisoners whose common suffering could potentially generate resistance movements if allowed to develop beyond individual endurance into collective action. These men speak of homes that exist now only in memory, families whose fates remain unknown, children who may have grown to adulthood without fathers, transformed from free citizens into mining equipment through simple process of conviction by Roman legal systems. Stories shared serve as collective memory preservation, maintaining connections to identities that existed before Roman classification systems reduced complex human beings to simple categories of imperial property. They speak of harvest festivals where entire communities gathered to celebrate abundance rather than scarcity, of wedding ceremonies that joined families rather than separated them, of children's laughter echoing through houses built for love rather than barracks designed for human storage between shifts of systematic consumption. One man whispers about his daughter's wedding that he had planned before condemnation, how he had saved coins for months to purchase white fabric for her dress, how his wife had spent evenings embroidering flowers along the hem with thread purchased one strand at a time from their meager household budget. He describes the feast he had imagined: roasted lamb purchased from neighboring farm, wine from grapes grown on hillside, plot his family had tended for generations, honey cakes made from recipe passed down through his wife's family line. The wedding never happened. Roman officials arrived 3 days before the ceremony, presenting documents that authorized seizure of grain stores for military purposes, demanding taxes calculated retroactively to include assessments that transformed legal compliance into criminal debt. When he protested that such demands would leave his family with nothing, they classified his objections as resistance to imperial authority, evidence of seditious thinking that required correction through legal proceedings designed to transform problematic citizens into useful equipment for imperial projects. His daughter, he allows himself to speak her name, Claudia, though guards discourage personal attachments that might interfere with productive focus, would be 22 now if she lived. Old enough to have children of her own, if circumstances had permitted marriage to young man, who had courted her with gifts of carved wooden combs and promises of devotion that Roman legal systems rendered meaningless through simple mechanism of paternal condemnation that eliminated his capacity to provide dowry, protection, or blessing for union that required paternal approval under traditional customs. Sometimes at night he dreams of her wedding feast, imagining flavors of foods he will never taste again, sounds of celebration he will never hear, joy of watching beloved child begin adult life, surrounded by community that values her happiness rather than extracting silver from men whose daughters grow old without fathers, whose grandfathers die underground, never knowing whether family lines continue or perish through systematic separation that Roman efficiency applies to conquered populations. These dreams require careful management because too much remembrance of what was lost can create despair sharp enough to destroy whatever psychological stability enables continued function under circumstances designed to eliminate everything human except capacity for mineral extraction. Yet dreams also provide only proof that love once existed, that communities once gathered for purposes other than systematic human consumption, that life once included possibilities beyond survival, measured against quotas that reduce human worth to ounces of precious metal extracted through gradual surrender of everything that makes existence meaningful. Yet conversations must remain carefully coded, avoiding expressions that guards might interpret as conspiracy planning or resistance organization, staying within boundaries of nostalgia rather than entering territories of hope that might motivate dangerous activity resulting in collective punishment designed to discourage solidarity among condemned prisoners whose cooperation might make organized resistance feasible rather than individually suicidal. Some describe escape attempts witnessed or rumored, though such discussions carry risks extending beyond individual punishment to encompass retaliation against entire work groups held responsible for monitoring each other's compliance with Roman authority, designed to make condemned prisoners complicit in their own consumption and their colleagues' destruction. Mountain geography serves as natural prison, surrounding mining areas with terrain so hostile that reaching civilization requires crossing distances. No weakened, condemned prisoner could survive, even if avoiding capture by guards trained in tracking runaway imperial property. Last winter, a man called Cassius had attempted escape during blizzard that guards assumed would prevent travel through mountain passes already dangerous for healthy travelers adequately supplied with food and clothing. Cassius had hoarded bread for weeks, saving fragments from daily rations until accumulation might sustain journey toward territories where Roman authority remained theoretical rather than practical, where surviving remnants of conquered peoples might provide sanctuary to fellow refugee from imperial justice. He disappeared during night when wind howled loudly enough to mask sounds of movement, when snow fell thickly enough to obscure tracks, when guards remained close to braziers rather than patrolling perimeters in weather that threatened immediate death through exposure. For 3 days, hope flickered among condemned prisoners who imagined Cassius reaching freedom, finding warmth and welcome among peoples who understood cost of Roman expansion, proving that escape remained possible for those willing to risk everything for chance at life, lived according to choices rather than quotas. But guards brought back his body on 4th day, frozen solid in mountain pass less than 10 miles from mining complex, evidence that even perfect conditions for escape could not overcome mathematics of distance versus depleted physical capacity, terrain versus inadequate preparation, hope versus reality of systematic weakening that makes survival impossible even when legal constraints are temporarily escaped. They displayed Cassius's corpse in mining entrance for a week, letting condemned prisoners see what happened to those who chose death, through exposure over death through systematic consumption, demonstrating that Roman authority extended beyond legal procedures into geographical impossibility that made resistance futile regardless of individual courage or determination. The frozen body served as reminder that legal death sentences could be escaped only through biological death, that offered no improvement over circumstances designed to consume human life gradually rather than immediately. Yet even this demonstration failed to eliminate completely the stubborn human conviction that freedom remained possible somewhere beyond mountain barriers, that communities existed where human worth was measured by contributions to collective welfare rather than capacity for mineral extraction, that life could include purposes more meaningful than surviving until replacement became economically necessary for imperial mining operations. Others remember surface occupations once practiced, skills that once provided livelihood and identity in communities that valued their contributions, crafts connecting them to customers and colleagues and families who appreciated their work rather than consuming their lives. These remembered competencies serve as psychological anchors, proving they once possessed identities more complex than mining assets, capabilities more varied than silver extraction, purposes more meaningful than imperial wealth generation through systematic self-destruction. Marcus remembers working his own small farm during seasons when labor meant cooperation rather than consumption, when effort produced results benefiting community providing effort, when strength was applied to tasks sustaining life rather than gradually destroying life while extracting wealth for distant authorities, who would never see fields being worked or meet people whose labor made distant prosperity possible. Those memories carry flavors of bread baked from grain grown by familiar hands, scents of soil belonging to people who worked it, sounds of voices speaking languages having words for concepts like home and family and future that made sense within contexts where such concepts could be realized rather than remaining abstract notions incompatible with reality of legal death status, eliminating all possibility except continued biological function in service to silver extraction. But memory becomes dangerous luxury requiring careful management, because too much remembering creates pain too sharp to bear while maintaining functional performance. Too much connection to previous identity makes current circumstances unbearable when bearing them represents only alternative to death through methods designed to discourage resistance while providing motivational examples to remaining condemned prisoners. The evening light, what little filters down through ventilation shafts, carries with it the promise of rest that will last exactly as long as operational schedules permit. This is not the gentle settling of natural dusk, but administrative decision based on calculations balancing human maintenance requirements against productivity optimization. Sleep allocated according to formulas ensuring tomorrow's capacity while preventing accumulation of strength that might enable resistance activities. As darkness settles over Spanish mountains and surface temperatures drop toward levels that would kill exposed humans, the underground chambers maintain steady warmth, regulated by geothermal heat that makes these spaces more survivable than surface conditions, though survival here comes with costs that no free citizen would consider acceptable payment for shelter from mountain cold that bites with geological determination, refined through millions of years of practice. Marcus arranges himself for sleep on stone shelf, worn smooth by bodies of men who came before him, who died extracting silver that now decorates Roman temples and funds Roman expansion into territories where fresh populations await identification, conquest, and processing through legal systems designed to transform human beings into mining equipment. The cold seeps up from rock that holds winter like memory refusing to fade, drawing warmth from his body with same systematic efficiency that Roman law drew citizenship, dignity, and hope from his legal existence. Feel the hardness of that stone against your back as you lie in your own comfortable bed, surrounded by softness that cushions rather than punishes, warmth that comforts rather than cold, that systematically extracts life force through simple physics of heat transfer from human body to mineral surface that has waited centuries and can wait centuries more, indifferent to brief sparks of human suffering that illuminate its crystalline structure. The blanket he draws over his shoulders provides warmth, calculated to prevent death from exposure, while ensuring comfort never approaches levels that might make current circumstances bearable rather than merely survivable. Woven from wool coarse enough to remind condemned prisoners constantly that even sleep occurs according to Roman specifications rather than human needs, rest serving operational requirements rather than personal restoration, unconsciousness representing temporary escape rather than actual relief from conditions making consciousness increasingly difficult to maintain. Around him in the darkness, 600 condemned prisoners breathe in spaces carved for half that number, their exhalations creating clouds of warmth that rise and dissipate like hopes that dare not linger too long in such circumstances. The sound fills stone chambers like ocean waves breaking against cliffs, rhythm of human endurance measured in breaths drawn, despite air thick with suspended particles that settle in lungs like cement, gradually transforming organs designed for oxygen processing into repositories for mountain dust. Listen to that breathing as you rest in your quiet room, hearing in it the voices of men who were fathers and farmers, craftsmen and scholars, citizens who once contributed to communities that valued their work rather than consuming their lives. Each breath represents small victory against atmosphere designed to kill slowly. Each heartbeat marks another moment of survival in spaces calculated to consume human capacity faster than rest can restore it. The barracks possess acoustic properties that amplify whispered conversations while muffling louder sounds that might attract guard attention. Stone walls shaped by Roman engineers who understood how to maintain security among legally dead men whose desperation could make them dangerous if allowed to organize resistance movements rather than suffering individually through circumstances designed to eliminate solidarity while preserving functionality. Conversations develop in languages Romans would prefer forgotten, dialects carrying memories of territories that once existed as independent kingdoms before imperial expansion identified their populations as suitable for mining operations. Men speak of children whose faces grow dim in memory, wives whose fates remain unknown, villages that were burned when Roman conquest identified inhabitants as resources rather than people deserving consideration as human beings with rights, purposes, and value independent of imperial utility. These whispered exchanges serve multiple purposes beyond simple communication. They function as collective memory preservation, maintaining connections to identities that existed before Roman classification systems reduced human complexity to mining categories, keeping alive customs and beliefs and values that Romans would eliminate, along with political structures that once protected such cultural expressions from systematic destruction. Yet conversations must remain carefully bounded, avoiding expressions that guards might interpret as conspiracy planning, staying within territories of nostalgia rather than entering regions of hope that might motivate activities resulting in collective punishment designed to discourage cooperation among condemned prisoners whose solidarity might make organized resistance feasible rather than individually suicidal. Some men describe surface occupations once practiced, skills that once provided livelihood and identity within economic systems, functioning according to principles very different from extraction operations now governing their existence. These remembered competencies serve as psychological anchors, proving they once possessed capabilities more complex than silver extraction, identities more varied than mining assets, purposes more meaningful than imperial wealth generation through systematic self-destruction. Marcus feels weight of 3 years settling into bones that have learned to ache in patterns corresponding to tunnel geometry, joints remembering every angle required for silver extraction, muscles adapted to positions no free human would choose, but which become necessary when choice disappears and survival depends entirely upon conforming human anatomy to mining requirements rather than designing operations around human limitations. Memory becomes dangerous luxury requiring careful management because too much remembering creates pain too sharp to bear while maintaining functional performance. Too much connection to previous identity makes current circumstances unbearable. When bearing them represents only alternative to death through methods designed to discourage resistance while providing motivational examples to remaining condemned prisoners. Yet memory also provides only proof that he once existed as something more than Roman property, evidence that identity persists despite legal definitions reducing complex human beings to simple categories of imperial assets. He remembers working his own small farm during seasons when labor meant cooperation rather than consumption, when effort produced results benefiting community providing effort, when strength was applied to tasks sustaining life rather than gradually destroying life while extracting wealth for distant authorities. Those memories carry flavors of bread baked from grain grown by familiar hands, scents of soil belonging to people who worked it, sounds of voices speaking languages having words for concepts like home and family and future that made sense within contexts where such concepts could be realized, rather than remaining abstract notions incompatible with reality of legal death status, eliminating all possibility except continued biological function in service to silver extraction. Sometimes, in night's deepest part, when exhaustion approaches unconsciousness, Marcus allows himself to imagine waking tomorrow and choosing his own tasks, working soil that produces food for his own table, rather than extracting metal benefiting him in no way, applying strength to projects serving life rather than death, growth rather than destruction, communities rather than empires built on systematic exploitation of conquered populations, transformed into human resources. These fantasies require disciplined management because hope can become more dangerous than despair when hope focuses on possibilities that current reality makes impossible to achieve through any effort circumstances permit, when dreams of transformation create expectations that disappointment could shatter into fragments sharp enough to destroy whatever psychological stability makes daily survival possible. Feel the safety of your own dreams as you rest in comfort, imagination free to wander through possibilities rather than constrained by circumstances that make hope itself a form of torture, sleep that provides actual rest rather than temporary escape from awareness of conditions making consciousness unbearable for men legally declared dead, but biologically functional. The sounds of night settle around barracks like sediment in pools, creating acoustic landscapes of human suffering expressed through coughing that never stops, breathing requiring conscious effort, whispered prayers in languages Romans would prefer forgotten, along with gods they invoke and hopes they represent. These sounds blend into symphony of endurance, music speaking to human capacity for survival under conditions designed to eliminate humanity, while preserving biological function, enabling continued mineral extraction. Outside, Spanish winds carry scents of mountain pine and wild herbs and natural growth continuing despite Roman engineering projects designed to transform natural landscapes into industrial sites optimized for resource extraction rather than ecological preservation. Yet natural aromas never penetrate barracks constructed to maintain security rather than provide access to natural comfort, built to contain condemned prisoners rather than house human beings. In profound darkness of Spanish mountains, when guards retreat to shelters warmed by fires that condemned prisoners will never feel, Marcus lies on stone that has absorbed heat from human bodies, pressed against surfaces carved for storage rather than rest, listening to sounds that speak to particular suffering of existing in spaces designed to minimize human comfort while maximizing human control. Where every architectural detail serves Roman security interests rather than basic biological needs of men who must somehow recover strength overnight, to face tomorrow's identical systematic destruction. Sometimes he hears sounds that might be weeping, carefully muffled to avoid attracting attention that could result in punishment for emotional display interpreted as resistance to legal authority, or psychological breakdown that makes prisoners unreliable for production purposes. These are sounds of men mourning losses that legal proceedings declared justified, but hearts refuse to accept as reasonable price for crimes often consisting of nothing more than desperation, driving choices that Roman law classifies as theft, sedition, or religious deviation worthy of industrial punishment. But sometimes he hears different sounds, fragments of songs hummed so quietly that only nearby listeners can detect melody, words whispered in languages carrying memories of communities that valued human dignity over productive capacity, prayers offered to gods who demanded no human sacrifice, required no systematic suffering, asked only for respect for natural world and care for community members regardless of legal status or economic utility. These sounds speak to stubborn persistence of human capacity for hope, beauty, love, connection, meaning that survives despite circumstances designed to eliminate everything except functional capacity for mineral extraction. Roman engineering can carve tunnels through solid rock. Legal systems can redefine citizens as equipment. Administrative procedures can calculate precise rates of human consumption. But something in human spirit resists complete reduction to categories that ignore individual worth, personal history, potential contributions to communities organized around principles other than efficiency in resource extraction. As consciousness begins dissolving into whatever dreams exhausted, condemned prisoners can achieve on stone beds in mountain prisons, we leave Marcus in Spanish darkness, surrounded by labored breathing of 600 souls whose lives Roman law has declared forfeit, whose strength feeds imperial ambition, whose suffering remains invisible to citizens who handle coins without considering human cost of their minting. Yet even here, in circumstances designed to eliminate all humanity except capacity for silver extraction, something persists that Roman authority cannot touch. Memory of what it means to be human rather than equipment, hope that human dignity possesses worth independent of productive capacity, conviction that love and beauty and meaning exist as more than temporary illusions destined for elimination through systematic application of legal and engineering efficiency to human consumption. Rest now in your warm bed, feeling grateful for laws that recognize your humanity rather than reducing you to equipment, for sleep that restores rather than merely delays tomorrow's consumption, for dreams that carry hope rather than memories of suffering designed to continue until biological systems fail completely. Let the gentle weight of your blankets remind you of the preciousness of simple comforts that Marcus could never imagine, the safety of walls that protect rather than confine, the blessing of rest that serves your restoration rather than tomorrow's productivity. Tomorrow will bring another descent into tunnels where legal death becomes biological death through processes so gradual that precise moment of transition becomes impossible to identify, where human beings learn to measure time not in hours passed naturally toward rest, but in quotas met against strength, depleted, silver extracted against capacity consumed, survival achieved against circumstances designed to make survival increasingly costly with each passing day. But tonight, as Spanish mountains sleep under stars that shine equally on palace and prison, on senator and condemned slave, on emperor and mining equipment that still dreams of being human, perhaps we can remember that dignity persists despite legal definitions designed to eliminate it, that worth exists independent of productivity calculations, that love survives even when systematic separation attempts to sever all connections between human hearts, and hopes that transcend immediate circumstances. The silver Marcus will extract tomorrow exists embedded in stone, formed through millions of years of geological pressure, natural processes that created beauty without human intervention, crystalline structures that reflect light according to physical laws older than Roman Empire, more permanent than legal systems that rise and fall while mountains endure, and human spirits somehow maintain capacity for appreciation of beauty, recognition of worth, experience of meaning that no administrative procedure can completely eliminate. Sleep well, dear listener, surrounded by protections that Marcus could never imagine, dreaming dreams that carry possibility rather than resignation, knowing that laws exist to serve human flourishing rather than requiring human sacrifice to sustain systems that measure worth only through efficiency in resource extraction. And remember that work of creating societies that recognize fundamental human dignity, rather than reducing people to categories of useful or expendable, remains unfinished, requiring ongoing commitment from those who understand that civilization's true measure lies not in monuments it builds, but in how it treats those who possess least power to demand better treatment. Until we meet again in another quiet corner of history, may your rest be peaceful, your dreams hopeful, your waking hours blessed with recognition that every breath taken in freedom honors not just Marcus, but all those who died in darkness, so others could live in light, who suffered in legal silence, so others could speak freely, who were consumed as fuel for imperial machines, so others could enjoy comfort, security, and opportunity that such consumption made possible for those fortunate enough to be born into circumstances providing protection rather than persecution. Good night, and may your sleep carry the warmth of human connection that no legal system can destroy, the hope that persists despite circumstances designed to eliminate it, the stubborn conviction that human dignity matters more than efficiency, that compassion serves civilization better than systematic cruelty disguised as justice, that every person deserves recognition as human being rather than reduction to equipment serving purposes that benefit others at cost of individual worth, personal history, and potential contributions to communities organized around principles of mutual care rather than systematic consumption of legally expendable populations. If this journey through history's shadows has touched your heart, please consider subscribing to join our community of gentle souls who believe that the most important stories are often the hardest ones to hear. That understanding past suffering helps us recognize present blessings. That remembering those who died without voice helps us use our voices responsibly for those who continue suffering in circumstances designed to render them invisible to comfortable consciousness. Like and share if this tale has reminded you of freedoms too easily taken for granted, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight. There's something beautiful about knowing our little corner of history reaches around the world to bring people together in understanding, compassion, and commitment to creating societies that protect rather than consume, that serve human flourishing rather than requiring human sacrifice, that measure success by how well they care for vulnerable rather than how efficiently they eliminate inconvenient. Sweet dreams, wrapped in safety that Marcus could never imagine, surrounded by laws that recognize your infinite worth, blessed with rest that restores, rather than merely delays, tomorrow's systematic destruction. Until next time, when we'll explore another chapter in humanity's long journey toward justice, toward dignity, toward recognition that every person possesses value that no legal system should ever be permitted to reduce to equations of productivity and profit, may your sleep be as peaceful as those Spanish mountains are now, where wildflowers grow above tunnels filled with groundwater, where natural silence has replaced the percussion of systematic human consumption, where morning light illuminates landscapes healing from wounds that Roman engineering carved into stone and human heart alike.